Hello to everyone across Africa, and to everyone who still believes this continent deserves the right to shape its own future. There are moments when a nation does not simply lose stability. It is forced to confront the true nature of the forces surrounding it, and today, Mali may be entering one of those moments. Only weeks after the assassination of Saif al-Islam, Gaddafi shocked Libya and reignited fears of foreign interference across North Africa. Mali is now facing what many observers describe as the most dangerous phase of war since 2021. Armed attacks are spreading far beyond Kidal. FLA fighters, JNIM militants, and other armed groups are expanding operations deeper into central Mali. Military bases have been targeted, supply routes are under pressure. Entire regions are living under the fear of renewed escalation. At the same time, voices close to the alliance of Sahel states are accusing foreign intelligence networks of helping prolong instability in the region. Some officials and commentators claim that drone technology, logistical support, and intelligence coordination linked to Ukraine and France are now part of a wider proxy conflict unfolding across the Sahel. Meanwhile, the Malian army and Africa Corps have launched increasingly aggressive counteroffensives across the country, turning Mali into the center of a much larger geopolitical confrontation. But the real question is not only what is happening in Mali, the real question is this: who benefits when the Sahel remains trapped in permanent instability? Who loses when African states begin reclaiming control over their own security, resources, and political direction? Because in geopolitics, no crisis appears by accident. And what we are witnessing today may not simply be another security crisis. It may be the beginning of a new struggle over who will shape the future of Africa in the years ahead. In this video, we will go beyond the headlines and break down the deeper forces behind the conflict, from proxy warfare and drone operations to regional alliances, foreign influence, and the growing battle for power across the Sahel. Follow the channel if you want to understand Africa through the perspective of Africa itself. What is happening inside Mali is no longer a localized insurgency limited to the north. The conflict has evolved into a nationwide war of pressure, exhaustion, and strategic destabilization. Over the past months, attacks linked to JNIM and armed factions associated with the FLA have intensified across several regions of the country. What once appeared to be a concentrated security crisis around Kidal is now spreading deeper towards central Mali, threatening transportation corridors, military infrastructure, and civilian movement. Military checkpoints have come under repeated attack. Supply convoys moving between strategic towns have faced ambushes. In some regions, fear has become so widespread that commercial activity slows down after sunset, while entire communities live with uncertainty over whether the next attack will target a road, a village, or a military outpost. For the government in Bamako, the danger is not only territorial, the deeper threat is psychological. Armed groups do not necessarily need to capture the capital to weaken the state. They only need to create the perception that the government cannot fully protect its own territory. This is why recent attacks have focused heavily on disruption rather than direct occupation. Airports, logistical routes, communication lines, and military infrastructure have all become symbolic targets in a larger campaign designed to stretch the Malian state across multiple fronts at the same time. In response, FAMA forces supported by Africa Corps have intensified counteroffensive operations throughout the country. Airstrikes, patrol operations, and coordinated military campaigns have increased significantly as Bamako attempts to regain momentum and prevent armed groups from expanding further south. But despite these operations, the pressure on ordinary civilians continues to grow. Food prices in vulnerable regions have fluctuated sharply. Transportation costs have increased. Humanitarian access remains difficult in some conflict zones. And across Mali, many families now feel trapped between fear of militant attacks and fear of a war with no clear end. This is why many analysts believe Mali is no longer facing a temporary security crisis. It is facing a long war of attrition designed to slowly exhaust the state, weaken public confidence, and transform instability into a permanent condition. As the conflict expands across Mali, leaders within the alliance of Sahel states are increasingly describing the war as something far larger than a domestic insurgency. Officials in Bamako and voices close to the AES have repeatedly accused foreign intelligence networks of helping sustain armed groups operating throughout the Sahel. These accusations intensified after the Battle of Tinzaouat in 2024, when Malian authorities claimed separatist fighters received external intelligence support during operations against Malian and allied forces. The controversy deepened after comments from Ukrainian military intelligence representatives suggested that armed groups had obtained what they described as necessary information connected to the attack. Mali later cut diplomatic relations with Ukraine, while Burkina Faso and Niger publicly supported Bamako's position and condemned what they viewed as foreign interference in the region. At the same time, several political voices inside the Sahel have accused France of maintaining indirect influence networks designed to pressure governments moving away from traditional Western partnerships. France has rejected those accusations. Western governments also deny supporting terrorism or destabilization in Mali. But inside Bamako, the perception is growing that the current conflict is no longer only a national security crisis. Many officials believe Mali has become part of a wider proxy struggle involving foreign influence, strategic resources, intelligence operations, and geopolitical competition across Africa. Drone warfare has become one of the clearest symbols of this new phase of conflict. Cheap reconnaissance drones, surveillance systems, and information warfare are transforming how armed groups operate across the Sahel. They no longer rely only on direct attacks. They can disrupt logistics, monitor military movement, spread fear, and influence public perception with limited resources. This is why many leaders within the AES argue that the battlefield now extends far beyond northern Mali, because modern wars are no longer fought only with weapons. They are also fought with intelligence, technology, narratives, and the power to shape how populations understand reality itself. And in geopolitics, no crisis appears by accident. The assassination of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi sent shockwaves far beyond Libya. For many observers across the Sahel, his death was not viewed as an isolated event. It was seen as another sign that instability in North Africa continues to shape the future of the entire region. Since the collapse of Libya in 2011, weapons trafficking networks, armed movements, and cross-border smuggling routes have expanded deep into the Sahel. Fighters, resources, and insecurity have flowed southward for years, affecting Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and several neighboring states. This is one reason why the death of Saif al-Islam immediately triggered political reactions far beyond Libya itself. Some voices close to the AES describe the assassination as a strategic message aimed at preventing the emergence of political figures capable of reshaping regional power balances or challenging foreign influence across North and West Africa. Whether those claims are true or not, the perception itself matters politically, because in regions shaped by decades of intervention, civil war, and geopolitical rivalry, many people no longer believe instability happens randomly. And this perception is directly influencing how Mali and its allies now interpret the current conflict. At the same time, the Alliance of Sahel States is trying to transform itself from a political coalition into a real security bloc. Assimi Goita in Mali, Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso, and Abdurrahmane Tiani in Niger increasingly present the alliance as a new model of African sovereignty built around military cooperation, regional coordination, and independence from traditional Western influence. Africa Corps has become part of that transformation. For Bamako, cooperation with Russian security partners represents an attempt to rebuild national defense outside the framework previously dominated by France. Western governments strongly criticize this strategy and warn that Russian influence could deepen instability instead of solving it. But supporters of the AES respond with a different question. If the previous security model was truly successful, why did insecurity continue spreading across the Sahel for more than a decade? That question now sits at the center of the geopolitical struggle unfolding across the region. What we are witnessing today is no longer just a conflict inside Mali. It is becoming a test of whether African nations can truly control their own security, resources, and political future in a world shaped by competing global powers. If the war continues to expand, the Sahel risks becoming trapped in a cycle of permanent instability, where armed groups, foreign interests, economic pressure, and information warfare feed into each other year after year. But if the Alliance of Sahel States manages to strengthen coordination, stabilize territory, and rebuild public confidence, the balance of power across West Africa could begin to change in ways that were almost unimaginable only a few years ago. That is why this conflict matters far beyond Bamako, because the real issue is not simply who controls a town, a military base, or a border crossing. The deeper question is who will define the future security architecture of Africa itself. Western governments argue that the AES strategy risks increasing isolation and instability. Supporters of the alliance answer that the previous model already failed to deliver security after more than a decade of foreign military operations across the region. And that debate is now shaping the future of the Sahel. In the coming months, all eyes will remain fixed on Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, not only to see whether they can resist armed insurgencies, but to see whether a new political and security model can survive under extreme pressure. Follow the channel if you want to understand Africa through the perspective of Africa itself, because in the next video, we will go deeper into the hidden power networks, strategic resources, and foreign interests shaping the future of the Sahel. History does not stand with the strongest. It stands with those who understand the rules of the game.